Hello and welcome to the program UFO Warning. In this episode, we're talking about the Socorro fireballs of 1949. That's correct, the Socorro fireballs of 1949. Now, this whole story's been around for a little while, but I bring this up because of this recent document dump. This came out today. More of this stuff from the Department of War. I have to tell you, there's a lot of stuff mixed in with this, and I have to ask myself, why is it even classified? I mean, it really is a dump. There's so much volume here that you literally have to go through file by file, and I don't think I could even go through it if it wasn't for AI going through and reviewing some of this stuff and sorting out the wheat from the shaft. Now, the file that we're looking at is the second one on the Department of War UFO website. You can go there yourself and look at it. And I asked Grok to go ahead and do a little bit of a summary of this thing. And it says, summary of the DOW UAP DO-17 General Correspondence of Sandia, 1949. This is a 116-page declassified collection of 1949 correspondence and reports primarily for Sandia Base, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and related military scientific personnel. It focuses on security matters at sensitive nuclear-related facilities and investigations into the green fireballs, an unusual luminous phenomena frequently reported over New Mexico in 1948 to 1949, especially near Los Alamos and Sandia. Now, it starts off with some routine conversation about some maintenance work that needs to be done to prevent some erosion at a site. And then it moves right into this next page. It says, main sections and topics, base security correspondence, airborne particle collections and fireball analysis, July through August 1949. The core scientific content involves attempts to link green fireballs to physical evidence. After a prominent green fireball sighting over Socorro on July 24, 1949, researchers, notably Dr. William Crozier and Ben Seeley from the New Mexico School of Mines, used impactor collectors, that's air sampling devices with adhesive slides treated to detect copper, nickel, and cobalt to collect airborne particles. It tells us key findings. Early collections, hours after the event, showed unusually large copper-bearing particles, up to 100 microns, from solid/opaque, others granular. That seems a little weird to me that you would have these fireballs show up, these green fireballs, and then when they would test, you would have copper. Well, you associate copper with the color green. Some nickel and cobalt indications were found, including spherical particles, which raised questions about possible meteoric origin. And it says particle sizes and counts varied over days. Smaller particles appeared later. However, conclusions were cautious or inconclusive. Many particles could be of local terrestrial origin, stirred up by road dust or from nearby buildings. No definitive link in the fireball was established. Well, I guess it would have been nice if they would have got a before and after, but you really couldn't do that because nobody bothered to test till after they saw these fireballs. It says these documents that they've released here from the Department of War includes tables of particle counts by size and date, plus discussions of collection methods and limitations. Basically, they just created a scientific paper. Now, broader context and recommendations, references to Dr. Lincoln La Paz, Institute of Meteorites, University of New Mexico, in coordination with military intelligence, suggestions for improved collection, mentions of Project Grudge, early U.S. Air Force UFO investigation. Yeah, what an aptly named project there, Project Grudge. Boy, they really held a grudge because we were being forced to go out and investigate all these wacky UFO claims, huh? In overall tone and significance, it says the document reflects early Cold War era concern over unexplained aerial phenomena near key nuclear weapon sites, Sandia, Los Alamos. Scientists and military personnel took the green fireballs seriously enough to conduct physical sampling and lab analysis, but results remained ambiguous. Typical of the era's UFO investigations, no exotic conclusions were reached. Emphasis was on rigorous evidence-based study. The PDF has OCR imperfections. It says old typewriter text, but the content is coherent. Yeah, thank you very much for doing that, ChatGPT or Grok. I went over to Google, got a little bit of AI on this because let's just face it, there's so much stuff here. I could spend 20 hours trying to read it all, and I haven't got that kind of time, and I don't suppose you do either. This says the 1949 Socorro fireball is best remembered as part of the infamous green fireballs phenomena, a wave of highly unusual, bright, glowing aerial objects that frequently streaked over the New Mexico's sensitive Cold War nuclear installations. Well, here we are again, seeing this very, I guess, fascination these things seem to have with nuclear installations. It says, key details of the sightings, what happened. Starting in late 1948 and peaking heavily through 1949, witnesses, including commercial and military pilots, reported brilliant, luminous green balls of fire. Socorro connection. A declassified 1949 Sandia-based document detailed unusual copper-bearing airborne particles discovered after one of the fireballs events near Socorro. And military concern, because these green fireballs consistently appeared over top secret facilities like Los Alamos National Labs and the Sandia base, it caused major alarm. The Air Force established an organized reporting system for them, leading to a specialized military and scientific study called Project Twinkle. Boy, they love these names, don't they? Project Twinkle. Astronomer Lincoln La Paz, Dr. Lincoln La Paz, a pioneering meteorist at the University of New Mexico who investigated the 1949 Socorro events, pointed out that the flight path and behavior of these fireballs were highly uncharacteristic of conventional meteors. So you have the guy that's an expert on meteors, and he's saying, boy, these don't look like meteors to me. The Soviet spy fear. In early 1940, Army intelligence officials expressed deep concern that these objects could be radiological warfare experiments or guided missiles launched by a foreign power such as the USSR, targeting U.S. atomic installations. Yeah, the very same people who had to steal the nuclear weapons technology from the United States, remember the Roseburgs, they're so advanced they're able to ignite green fireballs over our nuclear facilities. It seems kind of laughable, doesn't it? Official conclusion. Ultimately, government investigators like Project Twinkle were discontinued, and the official stance was that the fireballs were likely rare natural phenomena such as high copper meteors or atmospheric anomalies. Well, nothing says swamp gas like swamp gas, I guess. I mean, clearly something very strange happened there, and the best they could do was just write it off to a natural phenomena. Before I get into this Project Twinkle a little bit, I just want to remind people Socorro, New Mexico was famous for a UFO sighting. You might be thinking about that. This was the Lonnie Zamora event, and if we go to Google AI, it tells us a famous Socorro, New Mexico UFO event actually occurred on April 24th, 1964. So this is 15 years later rather than 49, but local police officer Lonnie Zamora witnessed an egg-shaped craft land in the desert. It left physical landing gear indentations and burned brush, remaining officially unexplained by the Air Force. Now remember, Mr. Zamora, he never changed his story up until his death. He always had the same consistent story. While the major Socorro event took place in 1964, government files, including records released by the Pentagon, show that New Mexico experienced a massive wave of green fireball phenomena and unidentified sightings in 1949. This prompted physicists, astrophysicists, and the FBI to hold secret conferences in Los Alamos to investigate the sightings. Now, as far as this 1964 Socorro incident, just the highlights of this, we've talked about this on the podcast before, probably should do another story. It says, the sighting, while pursuing a speeding car, Officer Lonnie Zamora heard a roar and saw a flame in the desert. He diverted to investigate and found an egg-shaped metallic craft on 4 legs. The occupants, Zamora observed, 2 figures in white coveralls near the object. Here we go with the coveralls again. We hear about these coveralls clear back into the 1800s when people were seeing these airships. It says, frightened by a sudden loud roar and a blast of blue to orange flame, Zamora took cover. When he looked back, the UFO was speeding away horizontally across the desert floor. Is that weird? So the police officer, he's chasing somebody. He looks over, he sees this flame, whatever, not sure, pulls over, looks out in the desert, and here's this egg-shaped craft, metallic craft, perched on four legs, sitting out there in the desert. He gets out, has a look, sees two figures outside of this craft wearing these white coveralls. White coveralls. Weird. And then, while he's watching them, apparently this loud blast happens. A blue-orange flame comes out of the craft. It doesn't go up in the air like you'd think. Instead, it says it speeds away horizontally across the desert floor. That's strange. The physical evidence. Investigating officers and scientists found wedge-shaped landing impressions in the soil and scorched brush. I believe there's still pictures of those things around. The insignia. Zamora reported seeing a distinct red insignia on the side of the craft, which he sketched for investigators. Yeah, that was quite strange. This has got a lot of depth to the story. Like I said, we'll have to come back to this. Now, getting back to this idea of this Project Twinkle, let's take a look at that real quick. Project Twinkle, we're told, was a short-lived, secret United States Air Force investigation launched in 1950 to study a massive wave of mysterious green fireballs reported over New Mexico. Operated by the Air Material Command and the Air Research and Development Command, it served as a specialized sub-project under the broader military UFO investigation of Project Grudge. Between late 1948 and 1950, military personnel, civilians, and elite scientists working at the Los Alamos National Laboratory witnessed over 150 incidents of strange bright green lights in the sky. Doesn't that seem odd to you that these all happen right at this time when they're doing all this research on nuclear energy, nuclear weapons? Unlike typical meteorites, these objects flew on flat, horizontal trajectories parallel to the Earth, just like the spaceship that Lonnie Zamora saw. Flat, horizontal, not up and down. They made absolutely no sound. They never left impact craters or crashed to the ground. Because these sites occurred directly over sensitive nuclear weapons laboratories and military bases like Holloman Air Force Base, the government feared they might be secret Soviet spy technology or reconnaissance flares. The investigation method. Following a secret military conference in Los Alamos in 1949, the Air Force established Project Twinkle to capture hard data. They hired Dr. Lincoln La Paz, a renowned meteor specialist, to head the research. The plan was to set up specialized 12-hour observation posts equipped with Ascania syntholite tracking cameras around Vaughn, New Mexico. If two different posts photographed the same fireball simultaneously, scientists could calculate the object's exact speed, altitude, and size. Project Twinkle was never fully implemented and was plagued by funding issues. How amazing. So they can talk about it all day long, but they can't provide funding to figure out what these things are. Plagued by funding issues, equipment delays, and bad luck. Ironically, as soon as the Systematic Observation Watch was established, the green fireball sightings abruptly ceased in the area. The cameras never managed to capture simultaneous measurable data of a fireball in action. Well, this is something we certainly have heard before. The Air Force officially discontinued Project Twinkle in late 1951. The Project Twinkle final report concluded that the fireballs were not a national security threat and were likely natural phenomena, such as atypical meteorites or atmospheric electrical anomalies. However, Dr. La Paz and several other scientists remained publicly unconvinced, maintaining until their deaths that the fireball were artificial and unexplained. Yeah, well, I mean, let's be honest. How often do you hear about a fireball moving horizontally across the desert landscape like that? I mean, we've all seen meteorites. They come down from the sky, and sometimes they look like they've landed nearby. Usually they haven't, because if they have, they're going to make quite a lot of explosion. Yeah, very wild stuff. Now, I do want to give some credit to John Greenwald over at the Black Vault, because he's been on this story for a while. that's kind of a little bit of an issue, because a lot of the stuff's being brought up, and it kind of gives the appearance of, this is all brand new information. Really, it's not. And that's kind of the problem. It's like John Greenwald has been spending decades, I think by now, putting in FOIA requests for this stuff, and lots of times he gets back blacked out pages of stuff. If they want real disclosure, just give John the documents he asked for, but quit blacking them out. And so I want to look at this article right here, because he does deserve some credit in this. The article is by lanl.gov. It says, this is a Los Alamos publication. Queries from the public can sometimes be otherworldly. Laura McGinnis, librarian at National Security Research Center. It almost feels like they're trying to get ahead of him a little bit on this subject. Now, this is written, I believe, back in 2018 or something. I don't see a date here on the article itself. Did you know that a conference was organized at the lab in 1949 to discuss green fireballs reportedly observed above Los Alamos? Were it not for the Freedom of Information Act, the lab's scientific probes into these mystery sightings might have been lost to time. So the concern I have, right, you see right there, is that a lot of this stuff's already been released to John through FOIA requests, and now they're releasing it on the Department of War website, almost like they're pretending like this is all brand new stuff, and it's not. So I'm a little concerned about this document dump. Are we getting really new, relevant stuff, or is this maybe stuff they're re-releasing it with a few less lines blacked out? I don't know. Signed into law in 1967, FOIA gives any person the right to access records kept by federal agencies so they can better understand the U.S. government's operations and activities. Well, I really have questions about that statement. Agencies are required to disclose information requested under FOIA unless that information falls under one or more of 9 exemptions protecting interests such as personal privacy, national security, and law enforcement. Yet oftentimes we see these pages released and they're just completely blacked out. Often described as the law that keeps citizens in the know about the government, FOIA is a vital part of the U.S. democracy. Again, I really question that statement. The laboratory's FOIA program fields over 100 requests for records each year, as the lab's classified research and technical library dedicated to information stewardship and education. The National Security Research Center regularly assists with these requests, close to half of the yearly volume. Yeah, in a perfect world, maybe. Fulfilling FOIA requests is an important part of what we do here, said NSRC Senior Archivist Daniel Alcazar. It's critical to our mission to ensure the public has access to information it has the right to see. Public queries over a spectrum of topics, but most involve requests for Manhattan Project-era technical reports and Los Alamos produced historical and scientific films or documents pertaining to former employees. While less common, Alcazar estimates that he also receives a few FOIA requests every year related to unidentified flying objects and other unexplained aerial phenomena. I bet it's a few more than that. Project Twinkle, a mysterious hypothesis. Oh boy. Over the years, general FOIA requests about UFO studies at the lab have led to some fascinating finds. One such example is the rediscovery of archived materials related to the evening of December 5th, 1948, when witnesses reported green fireballs across the sky over Los Alamos. The fireballs appeared several times over the next 3 months, flying noiselessly and just within eyesight of residents on the mesa. Yeah, I read somewhere where it was like 209 different sightings. Similar phenomena were reported near the Hanford site, a now decommissioned plutonium production complex in Washington State, and within 400 miles of Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Tennessee, another site of nuclear fuel production during the Manhattan Project. So whatever's going on with that nuclear fuel production has got these things interested. The number of sightings of these phenomena and their proximity to sensitive facilities were of concern to the U.S. government. Could the fireballs be a threat to national security? In response, a conference was organized at Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory, the lab's post-war name, on February 16, 1949, to discuss the strange phenomena. The conference was attended by scientists such as then Laboratory Director Norris Bradbury and physicists Frederick Rines and Edward Teller, that's the atomic bomb guy, as well as members of the FBI, the Atomic Energy Commission, the precursor to today's Department of Energy, and the U.S. military. Also in attendance was Lincoln La Paz, head of the University of New Mexico's Institute of Meteoritics and first-hand observer of the green fireballs. The NSRC collections contain the conference minutes. While the minutes attest that attendees were skeptical of attributing unexplained aerial phenomena, the extraterrestrial activity participants from the Army confirmed that the fireballs had been classified alongside flying discs within Project Grudge, 1948 to 1949, one of 3 consecutive U.S. Air Force studies of reported UFO sightings. The others were Project Sign, 47 to 48, and later Project Blue Book, 52 to 69. After further discussion, the notion that green fireballs were a significant national security threat was ultimately dismissed, as were hypotheses involving meteorites, aurora borealis, and weather balloons. In other words, they're telling you, we just don't know what these things are. However, the 1949 Los Alamos Conference was the beginning of a study called Project Twinkle that aimed to capture further data on the fireball sightings through a network of observation posts and photographic units. Project Twinkle was never fully implemented and was discontinued after 2 years, with the official conclusion that the green fireballs were likely natural origin. Now, they concluded they were natural origin, but they just didn't know how. The NSRC does not appear to have materials on Project Twinkle, although not all the millions of items housed in its collection are easily searchable yet. How long have we had the internet? 25, 30 years, and they still can't scan these things so we can search them? Forgotten pieces of history are being rediscovered all the time in the ongoing process of digitization and cataloging. Whether a FOIA request unearths one of these treasures often depends on how effectively the submitted keywords direct the archivist's search. Now, I have to call complete BS on this. I've seen requests that Greenwald's made, and still nothing. Crickets, silence, or blacked out pages. So you can see here, this to me is government employees getting ahead of the game a little bit. If terms provided by a requester are overly specific, even irrelevant materials could remain undiscovered. In cases where a query is too broad in scope or does not indicate a specific date range, the lab's FOIA team may suggest the National Nuclear Security Administration, which funnels the information request to the lab, asks the sender to narrow the topic or time frame. Once more specific parameters are established, the search for responsive materials can begin. Keyword searches can also be hindered by natural evolution of language. Now, it just continues on with this word salad. That's what I'm going to call this, is just a giant word salad. This is why we can't tell you what you're asking us about. I don't know. I guess I want to go ahead and just look at this article because, see, we're being told this stuff that's released today it's being implied that it's all brand new information. But what I'm seeing is a lot of the stuff that they're releasing to us in these document dumps, a lot of it is stuff that's already been referred to, already been partially released. It's kind of along the edges, along the fringes of what we need to see. And I still have not been hearing anything about the Black Vault getting the documents that they already have, but getting the versions that are not blacked out. Now, I want to finish up with this last article from the Daily Mail. I really hope to be able to find some contemporaneous newspaper articles from the time, but everything I came across is behind a paywall, and it's almost like they really want to keep this stuff, the original witness accounts, out of our hands, that's for sure. This article here, though, is just today, May 22nd, 2026. It says, UFO files reveal hundreds of sightings over America's nuclear weapons headquarters, from glowing green orbs to flying discs. Written by Stacy Liberatore, U.S. Science and Technology editor. The Trump administration's second wave of UFO disclosures has revealed a chilling series of mysterious sightings near America's principal nuclear weapons installation during the earliest years of the Cold War. Newly released documents tied to Sandia Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico, headquarters of the Armed Forces Special Weapons Project, the military successor to the Manhattan Project, detail at least 209 reports of unexplained aerial phenomena between December 1948 and May 1950. Now, they keep saying this stuff is new, but I just read the article from 2000, I think it was 18, talking about this stuff. So a lot of this stuff has kind of been regurgitated. The files describe bizarre green fireballs, glowing discs, and unidentified objects streaking across the skies near sensitive atomic facilities as intelligence officers scrambled to determine whether the incidents posed a national security threat. One report warned that the frequency of the sightings had become so alarming that military and government intelligence agencies agreed an organized plan of reporting these observations should be undertaken. Scientists and military investigators were so disturbed by the incidents that they launched airborne particle collection missions in the hopes of discovering physical evidence connected to the mysterious objects. The documents reveal that investigators detected unusual copper-bearing particles in the airborne dust samples after one fiery object exploded over New Mexico in July 1949. Now, I'm not sure. She says exploded here because in the other writings we were told they didn't explode. They just kind of passed through. Researchers even debated whether the strange material drifting through the atmosphere could have originated from the unidentified fireballs seen over the desert skies. In one extraordinary passage, investigators admitted that if copper particles truly came from the glowing objects, then the fireballs are not conventional meteorites. Well, I'm pretty sure they're not if these things are moving sideways, horizontally. Goes on, it says, the bombshell records were part of the latest UFO document release published by the Department of War as part of President Donald Trump's disclosure initiative involving unidentified aerial phenomena, also known as UAPs. Among the most striking files was a May 1925-1950 intelligence summary from the Air Force of Special Investigations describing repeated sightings across New Mexico during a period when Sandia Base served as one of the nation's most sensitive nuclear weapons hubs. The report explained that military and intelligence officials became increasingly alarmed after waves of unexplained aerial sightings began appearing near atomic research and weapons facilities. The frequency of the unexplained aerial phenomena in the New Mexico area was such that an organized plan of reporting these observations should be undertaken, the report stated. Sandia Base handled military aspects of America's nuclear weapons programs following World War II. The newly released files repeatedly referenced Sandia Base's connection to special weapons operations and inspections tied to Strategic Air Command nuclear facilities. The several reports focused on mysterious green fireballs repeatedly observed over New Mexico during 1949. The detailed scientific investigation dated August 10, 1949, outlined attempts by researchers at the New Mexico School of Mines to collect airborne particles associated with the fireballs seen over Socorro, New Mexico on July 24, 1949. Investigators used special equipment capable of collecting microscopic airborne material in the hope that debris from the unexplained object might still be floating in the atmosphere. I don't know, it seems kind of like a stretch to me. Goes on down, it says, according to the report, researchers found a large number of copper-bearing particles in one collection sample taken along Highway 84 north of 66. Now, it doesn't say that came out of the dirt or if it came out of the air, really. Scientists described the material as unfamiliar, granule particles, some measuring up to 30 microns across, while others appeared as opaque solid fragments. Another report noted that investigators found remarkable spherical particles showing strong cobalt indications, with some particles described as perfect spheres, roughly 12 microns in diameter. This reminds me of that search that Avi Loeb and Charles Hoskinson's financed down there in Papua New Guinea, where they recovered that stuff at. They're talking about these spheres they recovered, tiny little spheres on the ocean floor where they thought that some kind of a UFO had crashed into the ocean there. The documents repeatedly stressed the uncertainty surrounding the strange material. Quote, it seems very hazardous to draw any definite conclusion associating the copper-bearing particles collected with the fireball, one report cautioned. Still, the reports acknowledged that the possibility could not be dismissed. One intelligence memo stated that if future studies proved the particles were truly falling from the green fireballs, then the objects could not be explained as ordinary meteorites because copper was one of the rarest of the elements found in meteorites. Well, that makes sense. I mean, if you don't have copper in meteorites, but still the green color. The files also reveal that investigators considered deploying high-altitude aircraft above 40,000 feet to intercept material falling from the mysterious objects shortly after sightings occurred. Researchers believed rapid response airborne missions could potentially capture particles directly from the object's atmospheric trails before contamination from terrestrial dust occurred. One memo described plans for aircraft to fly through the exact atmospheric region beneath the object's flight paths as soon as possible after the occurrence of future incidents. The newly released files stop short of concluding the objects were extraterrestrial, but they make clear that Cold War military and scientific officials viewed the incidents seriously enough to involve intelligence agencies, meteor specialists, and classified weapons personnel. The disclosures are likely to intensify long-range speculation surrounding Sandia Base and New Mexico's so-called nuclear triangle, where UFO sightings have been repeatedly linked to America's nuclear weapons infrastructure for decades. Wow. Well, really cool stuff overall. Like I said, I'm glad the stuff's being released. I'm not sure how much of it's new and how much of it's just kind of new, looking at it from this new perspective. Hopefully we'll keep seeing more stuff, and I'll keep you updated on what's going on with the Department of War UFO document dump. Hey, if you'd like the program, don't forget to hit like, follow, subscribe. It doesn't cost a dime. Until next time, this is UFO Warning, over and out.